Without further ado, please put your hands together for our first speaker for TEDxBellingen 2013, Justin Brown.
Wow. Hello, everyone. What an intro. Thank you very much, Susan. I was almost crying. But here we are. So I'd like to start off my talk today by acknowledging the Bellingenuity people, as we did earlier, and respecting their elders past and present, who've lived in this area that we now call home for eons and eons and eons. And I'd also like to acknowledge each and every one of you and your ancestors past and present, and your elders. Just think of the collective wisdom that we have here in the room today. All of those eons bringing through into our minds. Us human beings who are naturally innovators, we are inspired, we think, we problem solve. And that's the gist of my talk today, is the collective wisdom that we hold as a community. Because I find this inherent creativity and inspiration, that with the capacity that we have as humans, yeah, we might do it in our careers, we might do it looking after our kids and raising our families, but do we do it collectively to take our community forward? I think we have a huge opportunity to do that. As Susan said, I had a great privilege of doing a research study on the Bellingen Shire and the diversity of the Bellingen Shire, and I spoke with over 70 different people representing all sorts of the diversity of the Bellingen Shire, from Urunga through Bellingen up into Dorrigo and beyond. And the diversity is huge, but there was one thing out of all of the stuff that I found when I put all the information together and I looked at what the responses were that I received from these great minds. And it was, community leaders, and it was also people that were struggling with employment and struggling with kids, as we all struggle with kids. But there was a key thing that stood out. I mean, as far as our environmental resources are concerned, we've got these glorious stretching coastlines, World Heritage National Parks, beautiful winding rivers and majestic mountainsides. But our number one key natural resource is the people. And so it's that which really got me thinking about what we can do as a community to move forward into the future. Because it seems like government aren't doing it as well as they could. The effectiveness, and that was another key finding I found from my study. There's a huge disconnect between council or our local government and the community. And it's not for want of trying. There's people on both sides of the proverbial fence that want to see that improve. And I'd like to suggest one way that I think that I could do that. This is not, I'm not bagging government at all. Government has its place in the world, particularly to Mike. We're here in Australia, we're a very privileged nation. At a macro level, we've got a government that provides public health, provides public education, provides social services, public transport. Hi, Mum. And roads. Now, we can't necessarily do that as a small community. But what we can do is focus on the things that affect us day in and day out. And that might be stuff like localisation. It might be stuff like environmental management. That might be stuff like youth unemployment. We collectively can come together and create strategies that we as a community think would be the best way to go forward. And that doesn't have to be a difficult process. And I'll give you an idea of what I reckon. Let's take a single topic. Let's say, for instance, environmental management. And that's a good one, because here in Bellingen, again, the diversity. People have very diverging views on what should be happening, how we should protect the environment. But it's untrue to say that the farmers and the agriculturalists don't care as much as the environment. Of course they do, because that's where the very lands on which they live is their livelihood. But of course there's contentious issues on the side, but what I'm focusing on is the collective in the middle, because there's more that binds us as a community than divides us. And it's harnessing that. So what we need is a hall. Yeah, this one will do. It's great. And we need a panel of thought leaders from around the Shire who have the capacity to represent different voices from the community. So again, if we're thinking about environmental management, we'll have 3 or 4 or 5 key speakers, and a fundamental role is the facilitator. We need a very, very strong facilitator, of course, which here in the Bellingen Shire we have a number to pick from. And the facilitator's role is to maintain the dialogue and to encourage the dialogue and to not let people rant, but to encourage that trust and the respect for everybody's opinion is valid and true. And encourage that. And the difference between the audience that we have here today and the audience that I'm imagining in this case is that there would be microphones over there. So there's an opportunity for the audience to contribute to this greater conversation. And at the same time, it's webcast to a local social media network for the Bellingen Shire. So single mums in Kalang can contribute. Elderly dudes down at Urunga can contribute. So there's a capacity for this broader conversation to occur in that time frame. And there's one objective to obtain from that, and that's to identify the key areas that we need to address in order to develop a strategy collectively on that topic about where we want to go into the future. And then for a period of time, let's say 4 months or 6 months after that event, the discussion is facilitated and moderated to reach a strategy that the community identifies as being our best bet to move forward on environmental management, for instance. And we do that across a number of topics. So we do that on environmental management, we do that on localisation, we do that on youth unemployment, etc., 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 etc. And that way we're developing a process that we as a community feel is the best way forward for us. And the constraints that government have are not placed on us, because we're not talking about the next 4 years to get elected. We're talking about the future of these kids, and all of our kids. And that's great, because we're talking about the long term. And what we're actually creating through this process too, if we keep this in mind through this process, we can actually develop essentially what could be described as a community bill of rights that we as a society and we as a community can agree on and set the foundations for how we go forward into the future. And that's all resulting on us just talking and using that collective wisdom that we have. Frustratingly, but not surprisingly, I presented this exact idea to our respected members at council very recently. And I quote you the response I received. Are you ready? Bellingen is not ready. And I suggest, ladies and gentlemen, that we are. Thanks.